question rises from within. Who have I really become? You look around and realize that the life you're living, the roles you play, the mask you wear, might not reflect the truth of who you are anymore. You feel it in the stillness between achievements, in the emptiness that lingers even after success, in the quiet ache that tells you something inside is waiting to be rebuilt. We spend so much of our lives constructing ourselves from the outside in, shaped by expectation, approval, fear, and survival. But one day, the cracks begin to show. The version of you that once fit so neatly into the world starts to fall apart. That moment isn't failure, it's the beginning of transformation. It's life whispering that you've outgrown the shell you built to protect yourself. This speech is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you were before the world told you who to be. It's about tearing down the false walls within you and learning to rebuild, not from fear, but from truth. Because rebuilding yourself begins when you finally decide to meet the real you. Facing the shadow within is the beginning of all real transformation. Every person carries within them a part of the self that has been buried, silenced, or denied. It is made up of emotions, impulses, fears, and memories that we have rejected because they made us uncomfortable or because others told us they were unacceptable. When we were young, we learned what parts of us were praised and what parts were punished. Slowly, we built a mask, a version of ourselves that could survive in the world, while everything else was pushed into the darkness. This darkness, this unacknowledged side, becomes what many call the shadow. It is not evil by nature, but it is dangerous when ignored, because what we do not face in ourselves gains power over us. The shadow doesn't disappear. It simply moves underground, influencing our choices, our reactions, and our relationships without us even realizing it. To rebuild yourself, you must walk into this inner darkness. You must dare to look at what you have hidden from yourself. It could be anger you never expressed, jealousy you deny feeling, sadness you pretend not to have, or desires that don't fit the image you want others to see. These are not weaknesses. They are fragments of your humanity. When you repress them, they rot in silence and begin to distort your life. The person who denies their anger might become passive and submissive, always pleasing others yet secretly resentful. The one who hides their fear might project confidence yet tremble inside at every challenge. The one who refuses to feel sadness may become emotionally numb, unable to connect deeply with anyone. Every piece of the shadow we bury finds a way to act out, often in the very moments we most wish to be in control. Facing the shadow is not an act of violence against yourself, it is an act of compassion. It requires the courage to sit with the uncomfortable, to listen to the emotions you once rejected, and to ask why they were banished. You might discover that behind your anger lies a deep sense of betrayal, or that your envy hides the unfulfilled longing to express your potential. When you begin to understand these emotions, they lose their power to control you. They transform from destructive forces into sources of wisdom. The energy once spent on hiding or suppressing them becomes fuel for your growth. But the process is not pleasant. When you begin to see your shadow, your ego will resist. It will tell you that you are fine the way you are, that it's too painful to dig deeper, that it's better to keep pretending. The ego's job is to maintain stability, to protect the image of who you think you are. Rebuilding yourself, however, demands the destruction of this illusion. It requires honesty so raw, it might feel like standing naked before your own soul. Yet in that vulnerability lies liberation. Because when you stop hiding, you become whole again. The shadow does not only contain darkness, it also hides potential. Many people bury their power, creativity, and confidence because at some point they were made to feel ashamed of them, A child told to be quiet might suppress their voice so deeply that they grow into an adult afraid to speak their truth. A person taught that ambition is arrogance might bury their drive and settle for mediocrity. When you begin to integrate your shadow, you recover these lost treasures. You rediscover your authenticity. The parts of you that were exiled now return as strength. Rebuilding yourself through shadow work also changes how you see others. The qualities that irritate or trigger you in people are often reflections of your own unacknowledged traits. When you find someone arrogant, perhaps there is a part of you that has never allowed itself to stand tall. When you despise someone's weakness, maybe you have been running from your own vulnerability. The world mirrors your inner state, and every encounter becomes an invitation to understand yourself more deeply. Once you begin to accept your shadow, judgment fades and empathy grows. You see people not as good or bad, but as whole beings struggling with their own hidden parts, just like you. Facing the shadow also dismantles the illusion of perfection. Modern culture praises positivity, success, and control, teaching us to hide anything that looks messy or uncertain. But real strength is born from honesty, not perfection. When you confront your shadow, you no longer need to maintain a false image. You stop performing and start living. You find peace, not because life becomes easier, but because you are no longer divided within yourself. The inner war quiets down, and your energy aligns with your truth. There will be moments when this journey feels like losing yourself. Old habits, identities, and patterns begin to fall apart. You may feel confused or even lost. But that disorientation is a sign that the old version of you is dissolving. The fragments that once fought each other are coming together to form something new. You are being rebuilt from the inside out. The person emerging is not a stranger, it is the real you, the one who has been waiting beneath the layers of fear and pretense. To face the shadow within is to reclaim your power. It is to take responsibility for your emotions, your choices, and your destiny. It is not a one-time act, but a lifelong practice, a continuous dialogue between light and darkness. Every time you acknowledge a hidden emotion or confront a painful truth, you chip away at the walls that separate you from your full potential. In this process, you learn that darkness is not the opposite of light, but its partner. Without one, the other has no meaning. Rebuilding yourself begins here, in the quiet act of turning inward, of daring to see what you have spent years avoiding. It is a journey that demands courage, patience, and deep honesty. But as you face the shadow, you begin to reclaim every lost part of your soul. And when the pieces finally come together, you no longer live as a fragment, you live as a whole being, capable of light, darkness, and everything in between. Embracing the pain of transformation is one of the hardest but most necessary steps in rebuilding yourself. Pain is something we are conditioned to avoid. From a young age, we are taught to see it as an enemy, something to run from, numb, or fix as quickly as possible. We reach for distractions, for comfort, for anything that spares us from feeling it. Yet, no true change happens without discomfort. Every form of personal evolution is born through struggle, through the dismantling of old patterns, beliefs, and illusions that once gave us a sense of stability. Pain is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is evidence that growth is taking place beneath the surface. It is the fire that burns away what no longer serves you so that something purer can emerge. Transformation begins when life no longer allows you to remain the same. Sometimes this comes through heartbreak, failure, loss, or disappointment. Moments that tear open the structure of your old identity. You find yourself standing in the ruins of what you once believed was solid. In those moments, your mind will crave to go back to what was familiar, to rebuild the same walls that once kept you safe. But the truth is that safety is not the same as growth. The pain you feel is the tension between the old self dying and the new self struggling to be born. It feels like chaos, but it is creation in disguise. When you experience deep emotional pain, your first instinct might be to suppress it, to cover it with distractions or force yourself into positivity. But suppressed pain does not disappear. It lodges itself inside your body, in your thoughts, in your behavior. It becomes the quiet force behind your fears, your insecurities, and your limitations. Transformation requires that you stop resisting it and instead allow yourself to feel it fully. This does not mean wallowing in despair, but surrendering to the truth that pain has something to teach you. Every wound holds a message, and until you listen, it keeps reopening in different forms. Pain often exposes what is false. It shows you where you have built your identity on fragile foundations, on approval, achievement, or attachment to others. When these foundations crumble, it feels unbearable because you have confused them for your sense of self. The process of rebuilding demands that you look at these illusions and let them go. You begin to see that the things you thought defined you were only temporary. The person you thought you were begins to dissolve, and what remains is something deeper, something real. Pain strips away the unnecessary, leaving only what is essential. Many people fear this process because it feels like losing control, but that loss of control is what allows the deeper transformation to take place. The self that tries to control everything is the self that needs to die. When you stop fighting the process, you begin to see that pain is not chaos, but intelligence. It is guiding you toward what you have been avoiding. It breaks down your defenses so that truth can enter. The more you resist, the more you suffer. The more you surrender, the more you understand that every wave of pain is cleansing you of illusion. The journey through pain also reveals your resilience. When you stay present with your suffering, you begin to see that it does not destroy you. You realize that pain, though heavy, is not permanent. It moves through you like a storm, and when it passes, it leaves behind a clearer sky. You discover strength you did not know existed. This strength is not built from avoiding pain, but from surviving it. From sitting in the fire and realizing you are not consumed. With every challenge you endure, your capacity for life expands. What once would have broken you becomes a source of wisdom and compassion. There is a profound humility that comes with embracing pain. It dismantles your pride, your certainty, your sense of control. It teaches you that life cannot always be managed or predicted. You learn to accept your vulnerability, to admit that you do not have all the answers. And in that humility, something miraculous happens. You become open. You begin to see beauty, even in the struggle, to understand that pain is not separate from joy, but part of the same rhythm of existence. Without sorrow, joy would have no depth. Without loss, love would have no meaning. Pain gives life its texture, its contrast, its richness. Transformation through pain is rarely linear. Some days you feel as if you are healing, and then an old wound reopens. It is easy to think you are moving backward, but you are not. Growth is a spiral, not a straight line. Each time you revisit the same pain, you meet it from a higher level of awareness. You begin to see that what once shattered you now only shakes you. The emotions that once drowned you now pass like waves. You stop fearing them because you understand their nature. Pain loses its power to dominate you when you stop identifying with it and start observing it. As you move through this process, you may also notice that your values begin to shift. Things that once mattered, status, validation, superficial success, lose their hold on you. You become more interested in authenticity, peace, and purpose. Pain has a way of simplifying life. It removes the noise and leaves you with what is real. It teaches you to appreciate stillness, to find meaning in the smallest things, to connect with others in a more genuine way. The pain that once isolated you becomes the bridge that connects you to the human experience shared by everyone. To embrace the pain of transformation is to stop viewing life as something that must always feel good. It is to understand that every ending carries within it the seed of a new beginning. The cracks that appear in your old identity are not signs of failure. They are openings through which light can enter. When you learn to see pain not as a curse, but as a teacher, you begin to rebuild yourself on foundations that cannot be shaken. You emerge wiser, softer, stronger, and more whole. Pain, once feared, becomes the sculptor of your highest self, carving away everything that is not truly you until only truth remains. Listening to the inner voice is one of the most transformative yet most neglected aspects of rebuilding yourself. In a world filled with constant noise, opinions, and distractions, the voice within has become almost impossible to hear. We are surrounded by influences that tell us who to be, what to want, and how to live. Society teaches us to value external approval more than internal guidance. We scroll endlessly, compare endlessly, and chase endlessly, all while ignoring the one voice that truly knows what we need, the quiet, steady whisper inside that is always speaking, if only we would listen. This inner voice is not loud or demanding. It is subtle, patient, and deeply honest. It does not argue or justify itself. It simply knows. It speaks in intuition, in gut feelings, in subtle nudges that guide us toward alignment. It shows itself in moments of silence, when the world quiets down and you are alone with your thoughts. But most people never make it that far. They drown it out with noise because listening to it would require change, and change demands courage. The inner voice asks you to be authentic, even when authenticity threatens your comfort. It calls you to walk away from what is false, even when what is false feels safe. This voice is not separate from you. It is you, the deepest, most truthful part of your being. It carries the wisdom of your experiences, your intuition, and the quiet intelligence of your soul. When you ignore it, you drift away from yourself. You begin to live according to expectations, to wear masks that please others but suffocate you. You may appear successful, even happy, but internally you feel a quiet emptiness. That emptiness is the distance between who you are and who you pretend to be. Rebuilding yourself means closing that distance, and it begins by returning to your inner voice. Listening to that voice requires stillness. You cannot hear it when your mind is constantly racing, or when your life is filled with endless distractions. It reveals itself in silence, in solitude, in reflection. When you take time to disconnect from the outside world, turn off the noise, sit with your thoughts, breathe, you begin to sense something deeper stirring within you. At first, it might feel uncomfortable. The silence might feel heavy because it exposes everything you have been avoiding. But if you stay with it, the discomfort slowly transforms into clarity. You begin to distinguish the difference between the voice of fear and the voice of truth. Fear speaks in urgency. It pushes you to act quickly, to prove something, to control outcomes. The inner voice speaks in calmness. It does not rush. It simply guides. You might hear it say things that scare you, not because it wants to hurt you, but because it asks you to step into what you already know is right. It may ask you to leave a job that drains your spirit, to end a relationship that no longer aligns with your growth, or to start something uncertain that feels meaningful. It may not promise safety, but it always leads you toward authenticity. Many people confuse this inner voice with the chatter of the mind. The mind is filled with thoughts, opinions, judgments, fears, and memories. The inner voice, however, is beneath all that. It is the awareness that watches those thoughts pass by. You recognize it by how it feels. When the mind speaks, you feel tension. When the inner voice speaks, you feel a quiet knowing, a sense of peace, even in uncertainty. Learning to listen means learning to feel that difference, to trust that the calm clarity within you is wiser than the noise around you. At times, following this voice will isolate you. The path it points to is rarely the easy one. It might lead you away from people who no longer resonate with who you are becoming. It might require you to disappoint others. It might even force you to stand alone for a while. But that solitude is sacred, because it is there that your new self begins to form. In the absence of external validation, you discover internal strength. You realize that peace does not come from pleasing others. It comes from living in alignment with your truth. The people meant for your next chapter will meet you there. The inner voice also serves as your moral compass. It knows when you are betraying yourself, when you are settling, when you are silencing your needs out of fear. Each time you ignore it, you feel a little heavier, a little more disconnected from yourself. But every time you honor it, even in small ways, you feel a surge of energy. You begin to feel alive again, because authenticity fuels the soul. The more you listen, the louder it becomes. What was once a faint whisper grows into clear guidance. You start making choices not out of fear, but out of conviction. Life begins to flow with a sense of purpose, not because everything becomes easy, but because you are finally aligned with your essence. Listening to your inner voice also changes how you relate to others. When you live from your inner truth, you stop seeking constant approval. You no longer need others to validate your worth, because you feel grounded within yourself. This shift allows you to connect more honestly with people. You no longer play roles or hide behind masks. You begin to attract relationships that resonate with who you truly are, not with who you pretend to be. Authenticity invites authenticity. There is also a quiet power that comes from trusting your own intuition. In a world where everyone is trying to tell you what to believe, to think, and to feel, trusting your own inner knowing becomes an act of rebellion. It means reclaiming authority over your own life. It means no longer outsourcing your decisions to society's expectations. The voice within might lead you to take risks others don't understand, but that is how greatness is born. Every person who has ever rebuilt themselves or changed their destiny began by listening to that inner call that others ignored. Over time, you come to realize that this inner voice has always been there. It has guided you in moments of uncertainty, whispered truth when you were lost, and comforted you in your pain. It never left. You just stopped listening. Rebuilding yourself means remembering how to hear it again. It is the light that never goes out, the compass that never fails. When you live in alignment with it, life begins to unfold in surprising harmony. You stop chasing meaning and start embodying it. The outer world no longer dictates your direction because you have found something far more reliable, the voice within that always leads you home. To rebuild yourself, you must learn the art of integration rather than escape. Most people, when faced with emotional pain or inner conflict, instinctively try to run from it. They bury themselves in distractions, relationships, or endless busyness, hoping that avoidance will bring peace. But what is repressed does not disappear. It waits patiently beneath the surface, shaping your life in subtle, unconscious ways. The emotions you try to suppress eventually find their way out through anger, anxiety, emptiness, or self-sabotage. The process of becoming whole begins when you stop running from yourself and start bringing all parts of you, light and dark, strong and weak, into harmony. Integration means acknowledging every aspect of your being and allowing it to have a voice. You are not just the parts that the world celebrates. You are also the fears, the doubts, the insecurities, the regrets, the hidden desires. Most people live divided, presenting only their acceptable selves to the world, while rejecting the rest. They wear confidence while hiding insecurity, show kindness while suppressing anger, display strength while burying pain. This division creates inner tension, a quiet war between who you are and who you pretend to be. To integrate is to call off that war. It is to sit with every fragment of yourself and say, "You are welcome here." Integration requires honesty. It is not about creating a perfect version of yourself, but an authentic one. When you integrate your emotions, you no longer label them as good or bad. You see them as information. Anger tells you where your boundaries have been crossed. Fear shows you where your growth lies. Sadness reveals what matters most to you. When you stop judging your emotions and start listening to them, you gain wisdom instead of shame. Every feeling, even the painful ones, carries a purpose. Integration allows you to extract meaning from your struggles rather than being ruled by them. Our brains take aim. This process demands courage because it involves confronting the parts of yourself you have long avoided. You might discover that the pain you blamed others for actually comes from within. You might realize that your need for control hides a deep fear of vulnerability, or that your resentment masks feelings of powerlessness. These realizations can be uncomfortable, but they are necessary. When you face them directly, the energy once trapped in avoidance transforms into strength. You begin to understand that the parts of you you once rejected were never your enemies. They were simply wounded parts asking to be seen. Integration also means accepting your past instead of erasing it. Many people try to rebuild themselves by disowning their history, pretending that certain events or mistakes never happened. But your past, however painful, is part of your story. It has shaped your understanding, your resilience, and your depth. Denying it keeps you stuck. Embracing it sets you free. When you integrate your past, you take ownership of your narrative. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of your experiences and start seeing yourself as the author who can reshape their meaning. The pain that once defined you becomes the foundation on which your new self stands. When you integrate, you also learn to live in balance. Instead of being ruled by one extreme, logic without emotion or emotion without reason, you learn to let both coexist. You can be strong yet gentle, confident yet humble, ambitious yet peaceful. Life stops being a battle between opposites and becomes a dance between them. Integration brings harmony because it unites what was once fragmented. You no longer waste energy hiding or fighting parts of yourself. That energy flows freely into creativity, purpose, and peace. The world often glorifies escape. People are told to move on, to stay positive, to let go. But letting go does not mean denial. True letting go happens when you have first understood and accepted what is. You cannot release what you refuse to face. Integration asks you to stop running from your pain and instead invite it to teach you. When you do, you begin to see that healing is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you were before the world taught you to split yourself in two. There will be times during this process when you feel conflicted, when old wounds resurface and you question whether you are moving forward. But integration is not a destination, it is an ongoing relationship with yourself. Each time you face discomfort with awareness instead of avoidance, you integrate a little more. Each time you forgive yourself for something once hidden in shame, you grow lighter. Over time, you begin to feel an inner coherence, a sense that all parts of you are finally working together instead of against each other. To integrate is to live truthfully. It is to stop pretending that only your strength matters, and to recognize that your weaknesses too are sacred. It is to realize that healing is not about cutting away your darkness, but illuminating it. When you bring your fragmented self into wholeness, life itself begins to align. Choices become clearer, relationships deepen, and peace becomes natural. You rebuild yourself not by becoming someone different, but by becoming complete, by embracing every part of who you are and allowing it to exist in harmony. To rebuild yourself, you must learn not to escape from your inner world but to integrate it. Most people try to become new by cutting away the parts of themselves they dislike, thinking transformation means deletion. But the truth is that healing and rebuilding are acts of integration, not erasure. Everything you have been through, every emotion you have suppressed, every flaw you have tried to hide, all of it belongs to your story. Nothing within you exists without reason. When you reject certain parts of yourself, you create an internal split, a quiet war that drains your strength. Real growth happens when you stop running from your own complexity and start making peace with it. Integration begins with awareness. It means looking honestly at the different parts of your personality, the confident and the insecure, the compassionate and the angry, the light and the dark, and realizing that they all serve a purpose. You are not meant to be one-dimensional. Life requires different versions of you for different moments. Anger teaches you to set boundaries. Fear shows you where your limits are and where you need courage. Sadness connects you to empathy, and joy gives you energy to continue. Each emotion, each aspect of your being holds a fragment of truth. When you accept them, you reclaim your wholeness. The danger of escaping yourself is that whatever you run from will eventually control you. The emotions you suppress become the unseen forces shaping your reactions, decisions, and relationships. The more you deny your pain, the louder it demands to be heard. It appears as anxiety, self-doubt, or emotional numbness. You may convince yourself you are fine, but underneath, the unacknowledged parts of your soul are calling for integration. Ignoring them does not make them disappear. It only gives them power from the shadows. The path to rebuilding begins when you stop fighting these inner voices and begin to listen to what they are trying to tell you. Integration does not mean indulgence. It does not mean acting on every impulse or emotion. It means understanding them, giving them space to exist without judgment, and learning from them. For example, when anger rises, instead of suppressing it or exploding outward, you can ask yourself what boundary has been violated. When fear grips you, instead of denying it, you can explore what it is protecting you from. When sadness appears, instead of pushing it away, you can let it soften you, teaching you empathy and depth. This is the balance between awareness and control, between allowing and guiding. Integration turns raw emotion into wisdom. To integrate, you must stop dividing yourself into good and bad. This false separation keeps you trapped in guilt and self-criticism. You are not meant to destroy your darker side. You are meant to understand it. The part of you that makes mistakes is also the part that learns. The part of you that doubts is the same part that pushes you to grow. When you look closely, you realize there is no real enemy within you, only misunderstood energy waiting to be transformed. The qualities you reject often hold your greatest power once they are accepted. Your sensitivity can become your intuition, your anger can become your drive, your fear can become your wisdom. Integration also requires patience. You cannot rush self-acceptance or force harmony into existence. There will be moments when old wounds resurface, when you feel as though you are breaking apart. But that breaking is not the end. It is the beginning of alignment. Every time you face a piece of yourself that once scared you, you reclaim energy that was lost to resistance. Slowly, your scattered pieces start to fit together. You begin to feel an inner coherence, a sense that you are finally standing on your own foundation rather than pretending to be whole. When you integrate instead of escape, your relationships begin to change as well. You stop expecting others to fill the voids you refuse to face. You stop projecting your insecurities onto them. Instead of demanding love to heal your wounds, you start bringing healed parts of yourself into love. You begin to understand others more deeply because you understand yourself. Compassion grows naturally from self-acceptance. When you no longer judge your own pain, you stop judging the pain of others. The world encourages escape. It rewards distraction, constant motion, and shallow happiness. It tells you to move on, stay positive, and forget what hurt you. But forgetting is not healing. You cannot rebuild yourself by running away from your past or pretending that darkness doesn't exist. You rebuild by turning toward it, by asking it what it came to teach you. Integration is not a single moment of enlightenment. It is a lifelong practice of returning to yourself, again and again, with honesty and compassion. Each time you choose to face rather than flee, you grow stronger. Each time you bring light to a dark corner of your mind, you free yourself a little more. Over time, you will notice that peace does not come from control or denial, but from acceptance. You begin to live without internal conflict, without pretending to be someone else. Integration gives you unity, a sense that everything within you is working together instead of against itself. You become grounded, balanced, and whole. You rebuild not by becoming a new person, but by finally allowing every part of who you are to exist in harmony. To rebuild yourself, you must be willing to let the old self die. Transformation always begins with an ending. It is not a comfortable process because the person you must leave behind is the one you've lived with for years, the version built from your fears, habits, attachments, and illusions. Yet every stage of growth demands a kind of death. You cannot step into a new identity while clinging to the fragments of the old one. The mind resists this truth because it seeks familiarity. It prefers the known, even if the known is painful. But the soul seeks expansion. It pulls you forward, even when it means dismantling everything that once defined you. The death of the old self is not a single event, but a gradual unraveling. It begins the moment you start questioning who you have become. You feel restless, disconnected from the things that once gave you meaning. The goals you chased no longer fulfill you. The people you surrounded yourself with no longer reflect your truth, and the beliefs you built your life on start to feel too small. This is not failure, it is awakening. Something within you has outgrown its current form. But before the new can emerge, the old must dissolve. You cannot pour new life into a container that still holds remnants of who you used to be. Letting go of the old self feels like loss because it is loss. You lose identities that once protected you. You lose routines, relationships, and versions of reality that made you feel secure. It feels as though the ground beneath you is falling apart. But what is actually collapsing is illusion. The illusion that you could stay the same forever. The illusion that you could keep pleasing everyone and still live authentically. The illusion that comfort equals happiness. When you begin to see through these layers, life strips you bare. It takes away what no longer belongs to you so that something truer can take its place. Many people resist this process by clinging to what is familiar. They try to rebuild their future while holding on to their past, repeating the same patterns under new disguises. They seek change but avoid transformation. Change alters behavior. Transformation alters being. Real transformation requires surrender. It means letting yourself fall apart without knowing who you will become. It demands trust that something new will rise from the ashes of what is dying. This trust does not come easily. It must be practiced in moments of uncertainty, when your old identity dissolves and you feel lost. In that emptiness, something sacred is being born. Death of the old self also means releasing the need to define yourself through external measures. The person you used to be might have been built around other people's expectations, the need to be liked, admired, or successful by society's standards. But when you begin to awaken, those definitions no longer fit. The approval that once sustained you now feels hollow. You start to crave authenticity instead of validation. The more you let go of who you were supposed to be, The closer you get to who you truly are, this death is not destruction, it is revelation. What falls away is false, what remains is real. The process is rarely gentle. There will be moments when you question everything, your choices, your direction, even your purpose. The mind will fight to preserve the old identity, whispering that change is too dangerous, that you will lose everything. In truth, you only lose what was never meant to stay. Every ending, no matter how painful, clears space for something higher. The grief you feel during transformation is the body's way of making room for new life. Like a snake shedding its skin, you cannot grow without releasing what has become too tight. In this dying process, solitude becomes sacred. The world may not understand the stillness you need or the silence you seek, but solitude is where transformation deepens. When you withdraw from the noise of the external world, you begin to hear the faint stirrings of your new self. It speaks softly at first, through intuition, dreams, and sudden clarity. It doesn't demand attention, it waits for your readiness. The more you sit in that quiet space between who you were and who you're becoming, the more your inner wisdom begins to guide the rebuilding. You realize that this death was never punishment, it was purification. Eventually you begin to notice subtle shifts. You no longer react from old wounds. You no longer crave the same validation. The things that once defined you, titles, possessions, roles, lose their power over your sense of identity. You start to live from a deeper place, one not shaped by fear but by awareness. You become less attached to outcomes and more aligned with truth. From the ruins of the old self, a new foundation emerges, one rooted in clarity, courage, and authenticity. To let the old self die is to accept that endings are necessary for beginnings. Every time you release a piece of who you were, you make space for who you are meant to be. It is not the kind of death that destroys, it is the kind that liberates. The old self must fall away for the new self to breathe. When you finally stop resisting that natural process, you realize that nothing essential is ever lost. Only the false dies. What is real remains, stronger, freer, and more whole than before. To rebuild yourself, you must learn to seek meaning rather than mere success. The modern world teaches people to measure their worth by achievement, status, and possessions. We are conditioned to believe that happiness is something earned through external validation, a certain job title, a perfect relationship, a number in a bank account. But these forms of success are fragile. They depend on things outside of your control, and once attained, they rarely satisfy for long. You may reach a goal only to feel an emptiness creeping in soon after, wondering why fulfillment never lasts. That emptiness is not failure, it is a signal. It means your life is asking for depth, not decoration. Meaning, unlike success, is not given to you. It is created from within. The search for meaning begins when you realize that the life you've been living no longer feels like your own. You start to question the purpose behind your routines, your choices, and the things you chase. You notice that even in moments of apparent triumph, something feels missing. This discomfort is not a curse, it is the beginning of awakening. It shows that your soul is craving alignment, not applause. Success without meaning becomes a golden cage, beautiful from the outside, but hollow on the inside. Meaning, however, gives your achievements depth and your struggles purpose. It transforms the ordinary into something sacred, because you begin to see your life as part of something larger than yourself. Meaning is personal. It cannot be copied or borrowed. What gives one person purpose might leave another indifferent. Some find meaning in service, others in creation, some in love or spiritual growth. The key is not what you pursue, but why you pursue it. When your actions are guided by inner truth instead of external expectation, they begin to nourish rather than drain you. You could be doing something simple, raising a child, building a small business, creating art, and still live a life of profound significance. Meaning is not measured by scale, but by sincerity. To live a meaningful life, you must be willing to lose the illusion of control that comes with chasing success. Success gives you metrics, things to count, money, likes, followers, titles. Meaning cannot be quantified. It is felt in quiet moments when you act in alignment with your values, when your inner and outer lives mirror each other. It is the calm that comes when you know you are living honestly, even if the world doesn't notice. This kind of peace cannot be purchased or performed. It is earned through self-awareness and the courage to live by your own truth. The pursuit of meaning often requires sacrifice. You might have to walk away from paths that look impressive but feel empty. You might lose people who were comfortable with the old version of you. You might find yourself misunderstood by those who still equate success with surface-level achievement. But the reward is integrity, the feeling that your life belongs to you again. When you begin to choose meaning, your energy shifts from proving to becoming. You no longer live to meet expectations. You live to express your essence. Meaning also changes how you relate to pain. In a success-driven world, pain is seen as failure, something to avoid or hide. But in a meaningful life, pain becomes part of the process. It refines you, deepens you, and teaches compassion. You begin to see challenges not as punishments, but as opportunities to grow closer to truth. Every hardship becomes a teacher. Every loss a passage toward greater wisdom. Meaning transforms suffering into strength. When you understand why you endure something, it no longer feels meaningless. It becomes sacred. Living with meaning does not mean abandoning ambition. It means redefining it. Instead of chasing recognition, you aim to create impact. Instead of seeking constant comfort, you seek growth. You begin to realize that fulfillment is not about reaching the top, but about being fully present on the way there. Every moment, even the small ones, carries purpose when you are conscious of it. The way you speak, the kindness you show, the patience you offer, all of these become acts of meaning when done with intention. Rebuilding yourself is not a single act of change, it's a lifelong awakening. It's the quiet courage to face the mirror and see both who you are and who you could become. It's choosing growth over comfort, meaning over approval, and truth over illusion. The process is never easy. You will lose parts of yourself, you will outgrow certain people, and you will walk through moments of solitude that test your strength. But every step, every challenge, every ending is shaping you into something wiser, freer, and more complete. The journey of rebuilding is not about erasing your past, it's about transforming it into wisdom. Every mistake becomes a lesson, every scar a reminder of resilience, and every loss a doorway to something deeper. You begin to realize that you were never broken. You were being refined. Life dismantles you not to destroy, but to rebuild you in alignment with your highest truth. So as you continue your journey, remember, rebirth is not a single moment. It's a rhythm of dying and becoming. Embrace it with faith, with patience, and with grace. I wish you strength in your transformation, clarity in your purpose, and peace in every step forward. Good luck on your path of becoming, and thank you for listening. Meaning also gives you resilience.